In the year 1891, a man named Ben Talbot embarks on a solitary nighttime walk through a forest illuminated by the full moon. Unbeknownst to him, a mysterious creature lurks in the shadows, attacking and ultimately killing him. Concerned about her missing husband, Gwen Conliffe approaches Ben's brother, Lawrence Talbot, for help, but he immediately declines. Days later, Lawrence returns home and encounters an elderly man who offers him a traditional stick. Upon arriving at his house, Lawrence's father, John, informs him of Ben's tragic demise. Lawrence also discovers that Gwen has already arrived for the funeral. Driven by grief, Lawrence visits the butcher's shop where Ben's body is being held, despite warnings not to view it. He is horrified by the gruesome sight. That night, seeking solace in a bar, Lawrence overhears locals discussing the mysterious deaths plaguing the village. Theories range from bears to gypsies, with one man suggesting a supernatural beast. A tale is shared about a farmer killed by such a creature 25 years ago, leaving his wife fearful of full moons ever since. Inquisitive, Lawrence questions his father about the creature responsible for his brother's death. John speculates it may have been a Bengal tiger but remains uncertain. He also reveals that Ben had been a mediator between their family and the gypsies. In an effort to make amends, Lawrence apologizes to Gwen for his earlier behavior and presents her with some of Ben's belongings, including a ring and a photograph. Reflecting in his room, Lawrence recalls a haunting memory of a loud noise in the night, which resulted in his mother's tragic suicide. The trauma led to his institutionalization. As the family attends Ben's funeral, Gwen decides to return home, but Lawrence chooses to remain until he uncovers the truth behind his brother's fate. John, fearing the same fate awaits Lawrence, advises him to stay home on the full moon. Disregarding the warning, Lawrence visits the gypsy camp to inquire about his brother. There, a group of men blames the gypsy's pet bear for the murders. Suddenly, a ferocious werewolf appears and chaos ensues as it attacks the camp. Lawrence, armed with a gun, attempts to shoot the creature but fails. When the werewolf chases a young boy into the woods, Lawrence pursues it. In the foggy depths of the forest, Lawrence becomes the target of the beast's aggression. Thankfully, a group of men arrives in time to rescue him, though he sustains severe injuries. He is taken to a gypsy camp, where an elderly woman heals him. Meanwhile, angry villagers demand Lawrence's execution as they believe he may transform into a werewolf. The elderly woman defends Lawrence, advocating for his second chance. Despite this, Lawrence is sent home, bedridden and plagued by nightmares. Gwen tends to him with care. One day, Lawrence miraculously awakens, his physical condition significantly improved. His once paralyzed arms function again, and his wounds have rapidly healed. Curious, he visits Singh, their family servant, who has been stockpiling silver bullets and weapons to defend against potential monsters. Lawrence discusses curses and the gypsies' beliefs with Singh, who affirms his belief in them. Inspector Francis arrives to question Lawrence about the recent incidents. John initially objects, but Lawrence agrees to the interview. Suspicious of Lawrence's story due to his past institutionalization, Francis suspects something amiss. When Lawrence abruptly ends the interview, Francis departs. One evening near a lake, Lawrence hears hoarse noises that Gwen cannot perceive. He explains the heightened senses caused by the werewolf bite. Returning home, they find a group of men waiting to capture Lawrence and take him into custody. The men are convinced that Lawrence is the werewolf responsible for the recent killings, and they intend to bring him to justice. Despite Gwen's protests and Lawrence's claims of innocence, he is overpowered and restrained. The villagers transport Lawrence to a makeshift cell in the basement of the local tavern. He is chained to the wall, his movements severely restricted. Lawrence pleads with the villagers, insisting that he is not the monster they believe him to be. However, his words fall on deaf ears, and the villagers remain resolute in their belief that he is a dangerous creature. As the full moon approaches, Lawrence's anxiety and fear intensify. He knows that if he transforms into a werewolf, he will have no control over his actions and will pose a grave threat to those around him. Desperate to prevent this tragedy, he tries to reason with the villagers once again, explaining the danger they are putting themselves in by keeping him confined. But his pleas are met with hostility and skepticism. Meanwhile, Gwen refuses to give up on Lawrence. She seeks help from an old acquaintance, Dr. Hohenegger, who has knowledge of folklore and supernatural creatures. Gwen explains the situation, emphasizing Lawrence's innocence and the possibility of a curse or a genuine werewolf being responsible for the killings. Dr. Hohenegger agrees to visit Lawrence in his cell, hoping to assess the situation firsthand. As he examines Lawrence, he notices the bite marks on his body and the rapid healing of his wounds are a clear indication of the supernatural. Convinced of Lawrence's plight, Dr. Hohenegger confronts the villagers, urging them to reconsider their actions. He presents them with evidence of the werewolf legend and explains that Lawrence may be a victim rather than a perpetrator. Some villagers are swayed by Dr. Hohenegger's words, realizing the possibility of a different explanation. Just as tensions escalate between those who support Lawrence's innocence and those who still view him as a threat, the full moon rises, casting an eerie glow over the village. Lawrence's transformation into a werewolf begins, and his agonized howls echo through the night. Chaos ensues as the villagers scramble to protect themselves and subdue the beast within Lawrence. Dr. Hohenegger desperately searches for a way to break the curse, realizing that killing the werewolf may be the only solution. In the midst of the turmoil, Gwen manages to free Lawrence from his chains, risking her own safety to stand by him. Together, they attempt to escape the mob of frightened villagers and find a way to bring an end to the curse. As the night progresses, Lawrence's transformation becomes more violent and uncontrollable. His primal instincts take over, and he becomes a formidable adversary, capable of inflicting great harm. The villagers, driven by fear and the need for self-preservation, continue their pursuit, determined to eliminate the threat once and for all. Amidst the chaos and bloodshed, Dr. Hohenegger discovers a hidden text detailing an ancient ritual that could potentially break the curse. He quickly shares this newfound knowledge with Gwen, who realizes they must find a way to perform the ritual before it's too late. With the villagers closing in, Gwen and Dr. Hohenegger lead Lawrence to a sacred location deep in the heart of the forest, to a place where the ancient ritual can be conducted. The ritual involves a combination of rare herbs, incantations, and an offering to appease the supernatural forces. As the final moments of the full moon approach, Gwen and Dr. Hohenegger guide Lawrence through the ritual, hoping against hope that it will succeed. They recite the incantations, burn the herbs, and offer a symbolic sacrifice, a representation of the werewolf's primal nature. In a dramatic climax, the curse is finally broken. Lawrence's transformation abruptly halts, leaving him wounded but human once again. The full moon wanes, its ethereal light fading into the night. The villagers, witnessing the successful conclusion of the ritual, begin to realize the error of their judgment. They come to understand that Lawrence was an innocent victim of a terrible curse, not the monster they had believed him to be. In the aftermath, Lawrence and Gwen, though scarred by their ordeal, find solace in each other's presence. The village, now enlightened and remorseful, vows to support them as they recover and rebuild their lives. The tale of Lawrence Talbot and his struggle against the curse of the werewolf becomes a cautionary legend in the village, a reminder of the dangers of prejudice and the power of compassion. And as time passes, the memory of the werewolf's haunting presence slowly fades, replaced by a newfound harmony and understanding within the community.